Well, for those of you who are joining us, this is Samantha Bosshart with the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. I'm the executive director, and of course, I'm so grateful for all of you who are joining us tonight on this winter night. I guess we're kicking off the holiday season with snow. I must admit, I am not there. I'm in warm, sunny Florida. um, but I will be returning tomorrow. I want to just say a few words about the foundation for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We were founded in 1977 to promote the preservation and the enhancement of the architectural and cultural landscaped heritage of Saratoga Springs. And we do that, we carry out our mission through advocacy, technical assistance, education, and restoration. Some of those things include like tonight's Giving Tuesday program, and our summer Sunday strolls, our autumn Sunday strolls. We advocate for endangered buildings like the Smiley Bracket Cottage, as well as 65 Philo Street, which I hope some of you are familiar with, that we recently sold, and we are now getting to work on our Clinton Street comeback houses. And also we advocate for preserving the historic character of the Saratoga Racecourse. Those are just some of the things that the foundation does. And tonight's programming, the donations that we receive help us to continue to do our mission. And we can't do it without your support and our members. I'm excited. If you are not already a member, I would encourage you to be a member. You can be an individual member for $35. And with that, you get discounts, you get our announcements for special programs and and are invited to our members only events, such as the one we had this summer where we did a spa little theater program at the Spa Little Theater before its restoration, its new new life is going to start. And it was really great to be able to have a behind the scenes tour. And I want to thank Chris Shiley, who is joining us tonight with SPAC. He is currently the SPAC president. He was appointed to this role in April of 2025. He previously served as the senior VP of artistic planning. He was instrumental in helping to shape the creative vision and direction of SPAC's programming in collaboration with CEO Elizabeth Sobel. His current role now, he's overseeing SPAC's programming and day-to-day operations in alignment with the organization's ambitious goals for the future. And one of those ambitious goals, obviously, is the Spa Little Theater. With that, I'd also want to welcome Carol Godette. She is one of our rock stars, and behind the scenes next to her is one of our other rock stars, Mitch Cohen, who's helping tonight. Carol was born and raised in Saratoga Springs. Her maiden name was Carol Stone. She's now Godette. She lives on Nelson Avenue with her husband. She taught the 5th grade for 31 years. She is a co-owner of Ben & Jerry's, and she was one of the first recipients of the Saratoga County History Award. In addition, you hopefully have seen her many articles in Simply Saratoga, and I think I always learn something from her articles, and she recently did one on this very topic. But we are grateful to Carol because she regularly does our Giving Tuesday program, and well as she's also always willing to participate in other programs in person, such as during our historic homes tour, which will take place the Saturday of Mother's Day weekend. She always draws a crowd, and we are grateful for her time and effort that she's always willing to give us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol. A few things we are going to ask. If you're just joined us, please tune in and say where you're tuning in from. Also, please stay muted. We would also ask that you enter your questions into the chat. We will address those towards the end of the program. So again, I thank you so much for joining us, and we welcome Carol. Thank you.
Hi. Next to me, I have Mitch, and Mitch is my neighbor, but he's also my sounding board. And when I do research for articles, I'll often talk to him first because he also works here at the Preservation Foundation and does house histories. So he's aware of what's in the folder. So this summer, I had some extra time and I was trying to decide my fall article. And I went to Mitch and I said, Mitch, I'm between two things. I'm thinking about writing about the Broadway Drink Hall because I know some things about it and it's an interesting building, or the Spa Little Theater. So do you remember that conversation?
I totally remember it. And my answer was unequivocal and quick.
Yes, it was.
We had to do the little theater.
Yes. And then I said, wow, that's such a big project. And I think back and forth, I think I spent an entire month. I was laid up with a little injury and I had nothing else to do. And I would bother you a lot and say, what can you find for me on this? Because you helped me with a lot of deep research and you knew about the folder here. So you're new here. I grew up here, but I didn't know that much about it. I thought I did, but I found out I really didn't. And I found out what a complex story. Do you remember anything that surprised you about it?
What surprised me was that it wasn't a theater, which is, I think, part of what SPAC is trying to slightly correct, is to make it more of a useful space. But it wasn't a theater.
Oh, we don't want to tell
Yeah,
too much.
we're not going to tell people what the answer is, but it was never meant to be a theater.
Yeah.
But it is a very important part of many people's lives because it's being used extremely well.
Yeah, and I think we are also surprised when we would talk to people to find out all these deep stories. And we're going to hear three of those stories possibly tonight. So as we look at our opening slide, you can see this.
We have to share.
Oh, sorry, you can't look at my opening slide. Let's turn to look at my opening slide. And on top of this, he's great with technology. He does technology for our entire neighborhood. He's a great neighbor to have. Like, yeah, have a glitch, call Mitch. So now we're going to be looking at my presentation and should be seeing my first slide. So I have this postcard collection that was left to me from Beatrice Sweeney. And I looked at this postcard hundreds of times, but I never really looked at it. We'll come back to that in a minute because I want to make this as interactive as possible. I know a lot of you are taking time out of your evening to join us. So we have some prizes for tonight. And I'm going to skip ahead to our first little contest, which you have a chance to answer in the chat box. And we're going to be looking at your responses. So I always like to do 3 truths and a lie. Okay, and there's a couple easy ones. And you want to look at the wording very carefully to catch the lie. So A, the building was named after Dr. Simon Baruch, a zealous believer and expert in hydrotherapy. B, parts of the building were used to store bottled mineral water and medicinal supplies during World War II. C, the land for the park's creation came from 10 different private owners. And D, many would-be famous actors appeared on the stage of the theater, sometimes using the mineral bathhouses as dressing rooms. So if you can, there is one that is a lie. So I'll give you a few more minutes and then if you want to think about it, we'll circle back to that. Oh, and we put up the little poll, so this makes it way easier. Okay, as you're thinking about that, I'm going to circle back to our first slide. Give you, do we have all the responses recorded? And if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. If you don't want to embarrass yourself because you're not sure if you know the answer. I think for this one, I have some Ben & Jerry's coupons on the line. We have some other prizes, which Chris Chris has donated something, and then the Preservation Foundation has a Hoofing It book for future questions that we're going to have.
You need to share the results.
No, we'll talk about that at the end. Just remind me, okay? Hopefully, I'll unveil the answers as you listen. So let's go back to our first slide. And I had looked at this postcard, but I had never looked at the top. And if you can read that, it says the Simon Baruch Research Institute. And I was shocked when I saw that. And on the back of the postcard, it said, a place where fuller knowledge of the use and possibilities of medicinal waters may be gained and perfected. And that totally surprised me because, as Mitch said, it wasn't a theater. It wasn't built to be a theater. It was built to be a lecture hall. So that was my first wow moment. So as we look at a map of the Spa State Reservation, or the Saratoga Springs Reservation, we could see this circle right in the middle, and that's where the little theater is. And you can see it's in the center. It's at the crossroads of everything. It's where wellness, culture, community all comes together in one place. Of this, Chris, did we say 25,000 acres? Is that correct? Yes?
2,500, 25,000.
2,500.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got that comment in the wrong place. 2,500 acres. Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. 2,500 acres. And there it is, right dead in the center. So let's look at how did we get this land? And I know somewhere Linda Harvey's here, and I got this map from Linda, who does tours of the park. And this park, although it says 1935, we started putting together the park before that. But you'll notice these black dots. So there were 136 springs in this whole area, but 19 of them were in constant operation. And at the beginning of the 1900s, a lot of people began buying up this land and using it for commercial purposes. They wanted to manufacture soda water. They wanted to get the carbonic acid gas out of the springs. And they were being overdeveloped and overpumped. This blue part right here where it says Clark, this is right where the Spa Little Theater is today. But because of this, men like Spencer Trask and George Foster Peabody came together and they took over this area and they stopped the pumping in 1909, the excessive pumping, because it was drying up the springs. So this was the beginning of this park. And there were two parts, the Geyser and the Lincoln part, but that part was 1,000 acres. But by 1935, when the whole park was created as we know today, this is the land acquisition. And I actually went through and counted. I think there's 25 different owners. Some were corporate, like Adirondack Trust, you can see, and some were private people that were owners of the land. So when you think about all this land that had to be acquired, it's pretty amazing. And I kind of, in my mind, this was another false conception I had, was that it was just this natural land, pine trees there, and it was just always there as this big open space, but that really wasn't true. So that was my first big aha moment when I was looking at it. So we saw the building and its name was Simon Baruch. Well, who was he? Well, he had a fascinating life, and he was born in Europe and he studied the European spas and he went to all of them. And I was once lucky enough to go to Karlovy in the Czech Republic. My daughter-in-law brought me there. And it's this great spa town where the whole idea is culture, music, health, everything comes together. And so he studied there, and he was hired in 1912 to come here and look at the medicinal values of our water. So he conducted all kinds of experiments. Of course, that building that's named after him didn't exist then, but he looked into things like how hot should the temperature of the mineral bath be? how long should somebody sit in it? What do these waters do for people? And then there was a funny thing I read where he said, I learned that you really need to have medical supervision because I was drinking too much of it. And I found out the difference between the Hawthorne and the Coisa springs that are both mild. The Coisa is a mild laxative and the Hawthorne is much stronger. And so he said, I really feel that this needs to be done under doctor's supervision. But he was convinced that the springs could do the most for heart patients with circulatory disorders. And he really felt that we needed to develop a center, and thus it was named after him. He died in 1921 before the building honoring him was ever opened, but his son Bernard was very close friends with FDR, and he was hired by FDR to chair the research laboratory, although his real career was a financier. And I see Bill Orzel's on here, and he was also a horseman. And I believe there's a Bernard Baruch stakes that still exist today at the racetrack in his honor. So lifelong memories of the Baruch family in Saratoga. This other slide from Mrs. Sweeney's postcard collection I really love because it's an aerial view. And if you've ever been to Versailles and you've seen the parks there, you see how beautifully they're laid out. And I read an article about how they looked at that Versailles park design to lay out our park. And this is called the Roosevelt campus, these four main buildings. And of course, FDR knew firsthand about the curative powers of water with his polio. And he felt that the average person should have access to this. So first, as governorship, I mean, he was important in this. He adopted a plan for construction in 1931, and he secured the funds. And I think it's amazing. I mean, what's going on at that time, Mitch?
The Depression.
The Depression.
WPA.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you remember reading about that part when we were doing the research?
Yeah, there was a lot of money that flowed until it didn't.
Yes. But it also put together hundreds of men who were out of work. It gave them work to construct this. And I read another article that was in Town and Country called the 7-Year Plan. So it did take a while. But by the time the complex opened in 1935, he was president. And securing that funds was really important. Here's the formal opening of the building. And it was the who's who at this ceremony. It was local dignitaries, it was state dignitaries. George Foster Peabody was the only surviving member of the original SPA State Commission to develop this. Physicians from all around the United States came. And this picture is actually in front of the theater. And that's where the address was made. The Saratogian even had an 18-page special edition with the headlines, America's First Spa in the European Sense of the World. And the opening sentence said, it's a place where the patient, by the very life that teems around him, will be made to forget that he's ill. What I also love about this complex is that although it's very uniform, each building has some unique things. And Chris and I were talking about this, and when we met, and when he gets to that, maybe he'll comment back, but this is the pediment over the entrance to the theater. And its detail is amazing. And so it shows Athena, the goddess of wisdom, with a woman next to her carrying the waters to the god of healing. And this level of sculpture storytelling appears throughout the campus. Each building has a unique sculpture. And also, I had never noticed, and Chris and I were talking about, that as you walk in the entranceway, there's a inscription, the Simon Baruch Institute, which I had never seen either. Even the arcades were designed to shelter people in wheelchairs or who had mobility problems and protect them from the rain and snow, allowing patients to move from one building to another. So the whole place was built with the idea of comfort and dignity. And of course, in the keeping of a European spa next door, and this is another postcard of this time at the opening, patrons walked over to the Hollis Springs, which now we go for dinners. But there were these 3 open springs, the Geyser, Cowesa, and Hawthorne. But up above in the balconies, they had orchestras playing. So it was a whole immersive, like the grand spas of Europe experience. Every newspaper and magazine of the time covered this. And here's one from the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. I don't know if you helped me find this one, Mitch, or where I got this one from, but it shows women coming to the spa to take the waters, and they're outside playing croquet. And the title of the article is Drown Your Physical Sorrows. And it's a reminder that the place wasn't just about treatments, but it was a total immersive experience. So here's the theater today. And over the decades, so many companies have passed through this building. And it doesn't matter where I am. The other day I was at yoga with Tracy Quinn and I said, oh yeah, she asked me what I was working on. I told her this and she said, oh, I was on that stage for the Stepping Star Studio recital when I was little. And pretty much we're going to hear from a few people today. Everybody I mentioned it to had a totally different memory. So I just put down some companies that maybe you weren't aware of that had once performed here. And another really curious thing that came about when I was doing my research was an article by Candace Waite about it getting a facelift. And what's ironic is now her son is the president of the board and is helping raise money. And we're going to hear more about that from Chris. So here, 40 years later, his mom wrote about the first renovation, and then he's working on the next phase of this company. But many of you probably have seen one of these theater companies. But let's think about all the people who probably were on this stage. And when Chris shared this photo of the green room, this isn't a photo from like the 30s or 40s. This is what it looks like today, which is kind of amazing when you think about having high quality performers here, and this is their green room before the performance. So for our next contest, I'd like you to type in the chat box, and we will reveal this answer right away. Oh, we have a poll. Okay, so look here, and Diane's going to put up our poll. So Kevin Kline, Chico Marx, Vivian Vance, Fred Astaire, and Patty LaPone. Who did not? So if you want to play.
5 participants, 6, 7, 8. 10, 14.
14? Okay.
18, 19, 20. Ooh, almost 100%.
That got it right?
Well, that have participated.
Okay, almost everybody participated. Okay, so Diane, what are some of the things people are saying? I can't see their
I can
answers.
share the results.
Okay. 10% Kevin Kline, 25 Chico, 55 Fred Astaire, and 10% Patty. If you said Fred Astaire, you are correct. So we will get in touch with you for a prize. I know who you are because of Diane's polls. Okay. Fred Astaire was my trick one because for those of you who may have lived here in the 80s, Fred Astaire was in the movie Ghost Story, and I watched him walk down York Avenue in the filming of that. And he also was with a jockey here for a while and spent quite a bit of time in Saratoga. So I thought I could maybe trick you with that one. But all of these people, and we're going to look at the different phases of the theaters, had appeared on the stage. Vivian Vance, you may remember from I Love Lucy. So it's a pretty commanding crowd of people. And yes, they didn't always have enough room in the dressing room, so they had to go next door to the bathhouses sometimes to change. So let's look at the first phase of the theater. And this was after World War II. And during World War II, it was used to entertain soldiers, and it stored mineral waters in it. The space reemerged after that because after World War II, we kind of lost interest in the whole idea of an immersive spa experience. And so the building sat there and it turned into the Spa Summer Theater. And these programs are all available in the room, the Saratoga room at the library. And I sat one day with Michelle and I just went through an entire box. She has almost every program from the 1950s of every playbill. And you look at some of the names here and you see names like Gloria Swanson, Shirley Booth, Groucho Marx, and he also, his brother Chico appeared with him once on that stage. And it's pretty amazing. The other thing that's amazing, here's the front of one of those programs, is it was really embraced by the town. Here you see, for those of you who remember, the Trade Winds and the Colonial Inn, or the Colonial Tavern, excuse me, were ads on the front page of this playbill. And people went out to dinner. And I also loved the price, but what does it say? $2.50, $3
Yeah.
to go, which probably then was a lot of money. But this was probably my favorite time, although I didn't go to it, but it was in the background of my life because my mom was a reporter for the Post-Star, and she covered the next phase in the 60s of the Spa Music Theater. Ray Rizzo was a acting professor at Pace College, and his wife Betty came up, and they had 5 children, and they worked tirelessly, and they ran it as a resident company. They had 4 professional actors from New York City, and they brought it 9 interns, and then they kind of sometimes had some locals. And they literally brought Broadway to Saratoga. And as you could see, this impressive season in 1963 of all these musicals. And when my mom covered it, she often brought my sister Pam. And this, to this day, she is a fan of Broadway musicals. And this is because why? The reason. And then she bought all the LPs and they played in the background of my bedroom my whole growing up life. So it was very much a part of my life, but more so, it was part of someone's life who's here, Susan Boken. So Susan, would you like to tell us how this kind of was a life-changing experience for you?
Sure. I wrote this out so that I didn't sound and ramble on too crazily. I wrote, my history with the Spa Little Theater goes all the way back to high school. When I stepped into the world of Brigadoon, I instantly fell in love with the stage. We were unbelievably lucky to perform in the beautiful historic building, Spa Little Theater, and experience it not only deepened my love of the theater, but also introduced me to Ray Rizzo. Thanks to that connection, I landed a job in the scenic department the following summer. That summer turned out to be magical. After many of the contract actors had left, the theater premiered a new Pirandello play, and to my absolute delight, I was invited to step in and perform in a real production. That was the moment that the theater bug truly bit me. Somewhere in the chaos of the sets, the scripts, long rehearsal nights, I started dating the scenic designer, Tom Munn. The Spa Little Theater became our playground and our backdrop. The 2 summers that followed, Tom and I, along with 2 good friends, ran a summer stock company in Southington, Connecticut, and those adventures eventually led to our engagement. Looking back, the Spa Little Theater didn't just give me a stage, it shaped my life. It connected me to the people, the passions, and the experience that still mean the world to me today. That's why I feel so strongly about supporting the restoration of the Spa Little Theater and why I'm proud to contribute to the Saratoga Preservation Foundation um, on Giving Tuesday, because their mission is to safeguard these remarkable historic buildings. And that resonates so deeply with my own story and my own career.
Thank you. I was pretty blown away. I've known Susan for a long time. We play bridge together regularly. I had no idea she was ever engaged to this person. So that when she told me that, I was like, what? And that's kind of how this whole researching this story unfolded. I would find out another story. I'd say, what? We're going to get to some more of those what stories. So the next phase after the Rizzos left was really amazing. It was called the John Houseman Theater at this time, and you'll notice we're referring to different names. It didn't mean that the building ever changed names, but it was leased to different companies and it became known as that. So it was known as the John Houseman Theater. And this is when Candace Waite wrote this amazing article, and I'm just going to make it available. I know I sent it to Chris, and it talked about the renovations and everything that they did to accommodate the John Houseman Theater, because nothing had ever been done. And $65,000 doesn't sound very much now, but probably for that time it was. And they did do some renovations, but that was 40 years ago, and nothing really has been done since. This was when Kevin Kline, Patti LuPone, and when you read, like if you go to Wikipedia or something that maybe doesn't do deep research, it says Robin Williams appeared here. He was in the acting company at this time, and he may have come to Saratoga, but I went through all the playbills I could, and I never saw him in any role. So I can't say definitively he was on the stage, but he was certainly with the acting company. But these were actors that went on to have international careers, and probably when I look at theater reviews, the most professional theater company we've had in Saratoga. So this was an amazing heyday. But then I found this article about how they decided not to come back because they just weren't getting enough of a run. So they stopped their time here at the end of the 70s. And this is when Eleanor, I see her online. So Eleanor was one of the many people. I said, did you ever go to the Spa Little Theater? She said, I went there for film all the time. Eleanor, can we unmute you for a second? Do you have anything to add about the film part?
Hi. No, there just were always good movies there in the summer, like in the evening. I remember actually going on a date with someone from high school, and he said we were going to the movies, and he showed up at my house, and I said, how are we getting there? And he said, we're going to walk, which, was, where I lived, right? So it was a bit of a walk, but it was always a beautiful place to watch a movie. My aunt would take me there, and they would run it off times in the summer, and it was just always a fun thing to do, to be out at the park 7:30 at night in the summer and take a movie and then, head home. I can't remember. Oh, I think I saw, I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to guess what they might have been, but they were always good.
Oh, thank you. So that was another aspect of the theater that maybe people weren't aware of. Probably the part of the theater that people are most aware about is the time of the homemade theater. They were there for 35 years, and I believe they did over 175 productions. And just if you could just raise your hand if you ever went to the homemade theater, I'm just curious to see if you can. So during the homemade theater, I have two people who really kind of felt that it was life-changing for them. One of them is a close friend of mine, and she's pictured in both of these pictures on this slide, Audrey Louet. She now lives in LA, and she was going to tune in, but I don't see her here. But I certainly know the story because I lived it with her. She had 1 year left in her college degree in acting. She was a flight attendant as well, but that was important to her. So she went back to Skidmore, and as part of her theater degree, she was in To Kill a Mockingbird. And she said that that was just one of the best experiences she ever had. It was pivotal for her. And then she had to do her senior project, and she did the play All in the Timing, which she got to direct. And that helped her finish her degree. And then she went on, and now in LA, she's been in lots of different things, movies and commercials. But the homemade theater was a pivotal event for her. Another person that reached out to me after when I wrote this article was my friend and co-writer at the magazine, John Greenwood. So John has a little story because this theater means a lot to him too. John, can we unmute you?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Um, my wife and I think it was probably the late 90s, attended Lost in Yonkers. And it was such a, I don't know, it really, we enjoyed it so much that I wrote a short editorial to the Post-Star, and I thought I'd read you the editorial because I think it kind of sums up, what we felt about the theater. And we had been going there as well as Eleanor to watch movies when we were dating, Patty and I. Found Lost in Yonkers, HMT's latest play at the Spa Little Theater. Grab a $20 bill, your car keys, and get yourself down to the ticket office. It will be the best $20 worth of entertainment you will ever experience in the capital region. Save your money on a bus ticket to New York City. Every member of this cast gave you a Broadway performance right here in the Spa State Park. I have only one regret, and that was not giving all of you a standing ovation. I just want to interject. I wanted to stand up. I don't know why I didn't. Nobody stood up. They really deserved an ovation, and I think that's what triggered this piece. I have only one regret, and that is not giving all of you the standing ovation at the conclusion. Matt Schwartz, Mike Coran, Ron DeLucia, Amy Rosen, Michelle Summerlin Jurgen, Peter Burley, Winnie Bowen, and HMT production staff deserve one for the job you did Saturday evening, October 15th. I'm not a theater buff or a relative. I am a husband who took his wife out for what I hoped would be a nice night out. What I got was an evening that impressed me so much that at the age of someone who could remember $1.75 lawn tickets at SPAC, I was moved to write a letter to the editor for the first time in my life. Bravo, HMT, John R. Greenwood. So, my wife and I have been dating and have been married 50 some years, and we spent a few nights at the theater and also going to the movies. So, it definitely made an impression.
Well, I think the part of the story too that you shared with me was that was the first time you'd ever written anything to a newspaper, and
Yes.
couldn't believe they published it. And it kind of gave you the courage to go on and do some writing. And now you're a regular columnist. You've been a columnist with me for at least 8 years for
I
the
believe it
magazine.
did kind of trigger something that I
Yeah,
think
it
it
triggered
was
something.
the courage to put yourself out there a little bit, even though it was a simple editorial.
Yeah. So, yeah, all of these stories where people told me a memory that was pivotal in their lives really touched me as I was working on this story. And um, this leads us to why we need to continue on with this building. And I'm going to turn this over now to Chris, who's going to tell us what's ahead for the building.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I love hearing about the history of this space, and I too have heard many memories from individuals who've been impacted by this space one way or the other over its many decades in the park. And it's been a real treat for me personally to work in the Spa Little Theater for the last 3 years, producing SPAC's year-round programming, and just to get to know more about what this building and what this space has meant to the community for so many years. So I'm excited to be here today and to share kind of where we are today with the space and our plans for the future as we think about kind of the next iteration of this building, and its next sort of phase in its history. So I'm going to kind of take us through some of the plans that we have for the building and some of the intent behind our designs. And the project is just mere weeks away, a week away actually from starting. So we're very, very excited to be getting to this point. It's been a labor of love, and we've been working with our wonderful partners at New York State Parks to get this project underway. So we're thrilled to be at this point of finally beginning our groundbreaking. I like to refer to this project as equal parts restoration and renovation. We take the history that we've heard so much about in this discussion very seriously, and we really wanted to make some strategic upgrades to the space because, as Mitch said, it's not a theater. It was not designed to be a theater, and from a production standpoint, it has some real challenges. But we also didn't want to lose any of the sort of wonderful intimacy and the charm that the space has when you're watching a show. I think it's what has made all of those experiences we've heard about so special for folks. It's a really incredible space, and we didn't want to lose any of that as we went through this project. So we're not trying to create some ultra modern state of the art theater here. We're really trying to celebrate the space for what it is, with some strategic upgrades along the way to make it a little more functional for today's sort of modern productions. So I'll start at the very beginning out here in the front. You can see there is not a whole lot changing to the front facade of the building. Anywhere in this project that we are able to maintain and restore, that is what we're doing. And out in the front is where we begin that work. We'll be restoring and repairing the limestone steps and the columns out front. One strategic change and upgrade to kind of my point about wanting to add some modern amenities is we are adding a intentionally designed and permanent ADA compliant ramp for accessibility in and out of the theater. Right now, we do not have an ADA ramp. We have a temporary ramp that's been added. So this is an important upgrade. This is something that is really important in today's landscape to be a welcoming space for all. So we're excited to make that upgrade while still maintaining the integrity of the front of the building. And the work being done out here is being overseen and managed by New York State Parks, who's been an incredible partner throughout this entire project. As we make our way into the building for our next slide, we come into the new design of the lobby. And this is a very different design and look than maybe you're familiar with. The bold red and blue that was added as part of that renovation in the early 80s, late 70s, that SPAC undertook, is being restored to the white and sort of off-white color palette with the deep red theater carpet, which is actually the original color palette of the building. New York State Parks did an amazing job when this building was being built of cataloging and recording the building of the space. And we were able to kind of reference our designs with the actual original photos of the space being built. And this is really in keeping with the original design of the space and kind of restoring to the original color palette and look and feel. So we're very excited to be kind of cleaning this space up. But again, as you can see, we're not tearing down walls. We're not making a lot of big changes in this space. A couple of strategic upgrades. We are moving the ticket counter. You can see where there's now a ticket counter in the main lobby. And it's a double wide ticket counter. So we'll be able to have multiple ticket takers, which when we have a sold out show in that space is going to be very helpful for ingress for individuals coming into the building. We're also going to be able to add a family restroom where the current box office is. That's something we're not able to offer right now. And that's a wonderful addition that we're excited to add in this space, as well as making the men's and women's room fully ADA compliant on the lobby level as well. So again, strategic upgrades while still maintaining the overall structure of the space. We can move to the next slide. So this is maybe a little bit more of a modern approach to a space. The space that you're seeing right now is currently that dressing room that was on one of Carol's previous slides. And so it's hard to believe that that's what this space is going to turn into. This is currently the artist green room and dressing room area. But originally, this space is located in a very strange position in the theater. It's located outside of a main exit point for the audience. And if you think about that from a performer's perspective, it's a little odd that the audience would exit the theater directly into the green room. That's not really a secure feeling for performers who are coming and needing a little bit of their own private space to get ready for performances. So a critical part of this renovation and working with New York State Parks was picking up some spaces in the building to create a backstage area. Right now, this theater has no backstage. And I do think you'd be hard pressed to find a functional theater in 2025, almost 2026, that doesn't have a functioning backstage area. So we are picking up a few spaces and rooms in the building that we are able to convert and create a backstage, which allows us to take this room and a room that mirrors it on the other side of the building and make them the public facing spaces they originally were when the building was built. There are some beautiful features, some crown molding, some original fireplaces, original flooring in this space, all of which we're intending to keep and restore provided we can do so, especially with the flooring. We have to see what condition it's in. But it all points to the fact that these were lounge spaces when the building was originally built. And after those lectures, they were a place to gather and further discuss what you had heard in the lecture hall. So part of our goal was to create a more welcoming space and a place for gathering for the community when they come to a show, and to have a place where somebody can come, have a drink, settle in for the performance they're about to see, maybe have a bite as well. So this is our cafe area. It'll be open to the public for every performance that we do. And we're very excited to have this additional space because right now, for any of you that have been to the shows there, you know there is no public gathering space in the building. We can go to the next slide. So let me get into the main theater. And again, a lot of what we're doing is actually restoring the original design and color palette. It has a classic feel to it, and we wanted to celebrate that classic feel. The red and blue is not original. And so we are kind of restoring the color palette to the cream. We are bringing in some of that deep red burgundy that you still have in there now, and you bring through in the theater carpet that we're adding as well. We are adding a mural, which kind of is evocative of the park and trees and the state park that we're in. We wanted to kind of take a nod to our position in New York State Parks. We think that's an important part of what makes this theater so special, is that you come into Spa State Park to experience these shows, and we wanted to kind of nod to that in the theater space. But overall, the design and the feel of the space is unchanged. We're not changing the balcony or the grade of the space or the seating. So that wonderful intimacy that you experience during a performance is going to remain. We're going to make a couple of strategic upgrades. As I've said, we're going to add some more ADA seating on the orchestra level because we do not have enough ADA seating to accommodate our guests currently. We are also going to make some upgrades to the stage, which you won't really notice as an audience member. We're going to put in a new stage floor. The wood that is there has served its time. I think it is original, or at least the thrust was added in the 80s. So it's been many, many years since that stage floor has been replaced. So we're going to replace the stage floor. We're going to make some upgrades to the fly system and the rigging system for the theater. These are all things that are very kind of in the weeds, but very critical to the way that we operate a theater space and will allow us to more easily load in and produce shows without large labor calls and large production costs as well, make it a much more efficient space to produce in. We're keeping the original light fixtures that you can see in this rendering and just restoring them and giving them a little more intentionality in this space. The seating will be a hybrid of new and old. The seats are the original seats. However, they have already been restored twice. So trying to get a third restoration out of them was really difficult. However, we're going to be keeping a lot of the original end pieces, which are these beautiful cast iron end pieces, so that we can still have those original moments in the space and it'll still have that feel. And then some of the seats within the original end caps of each row will be new seating, which will have some modern amenities as well, safety features, some more lighting, security lighting, and things like that, safety lighting for theater goers. So again, a lot of strategic upgrades, but still trying to keep the original history intact and feel intact to the space. Go to the next slide. This is that other room that mirrors the cafe, that other space. Currently, this for many, many years was the scene shop of the theater. And this room, I wish I had a before photo to show you. It's got a Jackson Pollock floor covered in paint splotches. It's got parts of the ceiling that are ripped apart and missing. Is a bunch of slop sinks in there. There's broken windows, and unfortunately, it's really taken a beating over the years, as tends to be the case with scene shops. And so we're very excited to restore this. We're calling this our community room. It's going to be a multi-purpose room. It can be an extension of our cafe if needed for sold out performances. It can be an opportunity for meet and greets. It can be an event space. It can be just a general gathering space. A lot of opportunities for this space to be a flex space for community members as well as for SPAC performances. So we're really excited to be restoring this room to kind of what it originally was. It has the windows that you see here are all there. You can tell it was this beautiful lounge that overlooks the park. And it's a shame that it hasn't been able to be a public space in many, many years. So we're very excited to be restoring this. Sorry, next slide. There we go. This is the upper lobby of the space, so kind of a continuation of what you saw down below. And again, we are keeping all of the molding and intricate details. You can see that well in this rendering. There's so many amazing original features, and everywhere that we can maintain those, we want to maintain them and make them intentional in the design. We work very closely with the Finney Design Group to create this rendering. This has been a labor of love for them in this project, and everyone's been very excited to really find ways to celebrate the history of the space, and they've really done a great job of incorporating that into their design. Great. And our final slide is that backstage area green room I was talking about. So you saw the dressing room in Carol's photo in her slide. This is now going to be the green room space that we have available to our artists. And there will also be 2 very generous dressing rooms for them to use as well. This is really the kind of space that we think is imperative for artists that we're bringing to the space. We've enjoyed bringing some incredible artists to the space. Yo-Yo Ma, Emmanuel Axe. We welcomed Renee Fleming in here this past summer. We've had incredible global artists like Zakir Hussain. We've had theater companies, dance companies, and the spaces we're offering them from an artist perspective have just not been in keeping with what they're used to seeing and experiencing in 2025. And so we really wanted to upgrade the experience for the artists and make it a more welcoming space for them, in addition to being a welcoming space for the community. So this is a tremendous transformation. For any of you who have been in the admin building, this is currently the Gideon Putnam room, which is a training room for state parks. This is a room that they've generously allowed us to take operation of to make this whole renovation work to pick up the backstage area. So this is one of our other big transformation spaces, and we're very excited to have this space as an addition to the renovation. And we do have one more slide. I'm sorry, I forgot. So we'll go to the last one. And then finally, and as an extension of that community room and just off of the new dressing room, we're going to be putting in this patio that you see here. Now, what's interesting about this patio is that it was actually part of the original design. When they originally built the building in 1935, there was a patio in this sort of nook or courtyard that exists between the 2 ends of the building. Now, it was taken out many years later. We're not entirely sure why. So we're excited to be restoring it and to create a little indoor-outdoor space. Part of what we wanted to do with some of the activations of these spaces in our renovation was kind of connect people to the park in a more intentional way when they come to the theater. So through that community room where they have those beautiful windows that outlook the park, and then being able to walk out onto this patio and kind of be out there in the center of Spa State Park are really exciting renovations for us. And we're really excited to add this as yet another component of this renovation project. And this all ties into the SPAC 4 Seasons campaign. We are currently in the process of raising funds for this Spa Little Theater renovation. It is a $12 million project, and we've had an incredible generosity and outpouring from our board, from New York State Parks, and from other members of the community. It's well underway, and it's tied into a 4 Seasons campaign, which is really a celebration of SPAC's 60th season, which is 2026. So it's a great opportunity for us to really think ahead on the future of SPAC, what our next 60 years are going to look like. We really see the Spa Little Theater as our year-round home as a venue. Getting to year-round operation as a venue has been a real focus of Elizabeth Sobel and mine since we got here almost 10 years ago. And we have been making a lot of strides in becoming a year-round presenter. We think it's our job as an organization to be connected to the community all year round, not just for the summer months and not just in the amphitheater. And so being able to renovate the Spa Little Theater and think to the future and really solidify ourselves as a year-round presenter of cultural programming in Saratoga Springs and the capital region is a very exciting step for us as an organization. And this is a really exciting moment for us to be entering both this project and this campaign as we look to our 60th anniversary. Thank you so much for being here. Carol, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. So Chris and I met to talk about this program last week, and I was sharing with him an article that some of you know, Craig Wilson, who wrote for the Saratogian, had written about the theater. And he said, this is when Herb Chesborough was the CEO. And he said, we have no winter activities. We're a summer festival, and we have no intention of doing anything but what we do best. It doesn't work for us. It would be like Salzburg running a festival in February. And so Chris and I talked about that. And he said, well, yeah, you were here. Like, well, Saratoga was a very different place. And it was very different. And probably then we couldn't have been year round. But now things have changed. And I'm really thrilled that this is going to be a year-round place and some place that we can continue to make all these memories like so many people shared tonight. So I appreciate the work that you all are doing on this. I wonder if people have questions about your project, your part, and if so, if they could type it into the chat box so you could answer those questions. So we'll give people a second if you do want to ask something.
Well, while we see if there's any questions, I just want to say again, thank you to Carol and Chris for taking your time to share this story. I think what is really special about the Spa State Park is that it's always been something that came from the community, whether it was Spencer Trask passing the legislation to protect the springs, to all the different partners who have come through the park over the years. In fact, we recognized all the partners many years ago with a Spirit of Preservation Award, because without all the different partners, it wouldn't be the dynamic, amazing space that is. And that's the golf course, to the Gideon Putnam Hotel, to the Roosevelt Baths, to the Saratoga Automobile Museum, all SPAC, there's so many partners that make the Spa State Park really a national treasure. And we're really fortunate that the partners such as SPAC, the New York Office of Parks, Recs, and Preservation, have come together, as well as the communities, to support this, and Finney Design Group to really make a balance between preservation and modernization. And that's something we feel strongly about with the Saratoga race course. You have to have that balance, because if you lose that character, you use that unique space, it won't be as special. But if you don't modernize it, you run the risk of losing that space. So I think striking that balance is so critical, and it's so exciting to see you guys do that and have it be a viable space for another 100 years. We did receive one question, and that is, and probably the toughest one for you to answer, is when do you expect the first opening night?
Yeah, leave it to Susan Boken to ask that question. I could have guessed, Our plan is to cut the ribbon on this space in 2026 as sort of the close of our celebration of our 60th anniversary. We want to cut the ribbon on our forever year-round home here, and that's very much our intent. And we are all systems go to make that happen. And as today, that's our goal. Now, will that be a performance versus maybe a party or a celebration of the new space? We'll see. Booking an artist and locking them into a contract and a date when you're under construction is a bit of a balancing act. So we'll see how that goes as the project is underway. But our intent is to cut the ribbon and really have this be the closing celebration of our 60th anniversary.
speaking of closing, before we close, I do want to announce some of our prize winners. So the question at the beginning, the 3 truths and a lie, the correct answer was C, which was, it was not just 10 people. So that was a little tricky because it was several different people. And here are our results. And Diane is just this whiz with polls. And I used to have to then, dip my hand in and pick something out, but there's all the quiz generator picks a winner. And so it scrambles up all the people who correctly guessed C. And the winner of the prize package is Tracy Quinn. And we have some swag from SPAC for her that Chris is going to donate. And we will get that to Tracy. I know you're getting ready to leave for Florida, but Chris, you can trust him. He has some items for me. Correct, Chris?
Yes, no worries. We will get you your swag. I don't know if we have a sun hat for your Florida trip, but we'll get you something.
Also, for the question number 2, which performer, we had 3 correct answers. There were some other people who answered correctly, but we didn't know what your names were. It just said guest. But we do know that Marco and Christy are winners, Jed Davis and Steve Dodd. So I will be getting you some Ben and Jerry's coupons for that. So we appreciate all of you taking the time out of your night to come and listen to this. And I can't help but call out to Mary Ann Fitzgerald, who is here, and she's our former historian for our city, and she just retired on Halloween. But I love to see that you're still engaged and involved and interested. And I know that history is in your blood, so you will always be here at programs listening and learning. Yeah, and some people are saying happy retirement and well-deserved. And if there's any other questions before we sign off, and I'd like to give some special thanks to the SPAC staff for helping me with this, and also for the Saratoga room at the library. Michelle spent a lot of time, and I did not go through the file cabinet of World War II, but there's a whole file cabinet on that and what happened there. Again, this project was way beyond the scope of anything I've ever researched. And I think I could probably spend the next few years doing more research and still not find everything out. So what am I working on next? Well, I haven't talked about that with Mitch, although I do have a few little things tucked in a corner. So I'm not sure exactly the next project, but there's a lot of things on the forefront.
Well, we will be sure to ask you what it is for May.
Yes.
With that said, I want to also thank Eleanor and John and Susan Boken for sharing their memories. And Susan, thank you for the kind words about the foundation and your generous gift that we received. I will just leave it at that. But we are so grateful to all of our members, our donors. And again, if you are not a member, we encourage you to be one. And we also encourage you to support SPAC in their programming and their efforts to restore this great building with so much history. With that said, I also want to say thank you to Diane Winter, our development director or director of development. I apologize, I got her title wrong. With that, she's been behind the scenes helping with this program, and I'm very grateful for her time tonight to help. And so with that, thank you, Carol and Chris and everyone for your time, and stay warm and stay cozy.